They thought I was just the quiet, awkward grandchild in the corner, the one who always showed up late to family events, kept to himself, and barely said a word. But what they didn't know was that I had already figured them out years ago, and by the time Grandma passed away, I had something they never saw coming. You see, when the lawyer read the will, and my name wasn't mentioned at all, I didn't cry, I didn't shout, I didn't ask why, because I already knew what they did, and I knew what was coming next. What they didn't know was that I had hidden a tiny recorder inside her coffin, tucked neatly under her favorite silk pillow. And that recorder captured the one conversation that would destroy everything they built on lies. But let me take you back a little so you'll understand how we got here, and why I wasn't surprised when they tried to steal everything. I grew up idolizing my grandmother. Her name was Evelyn, and she was the only person in my entire family who actually believed in me. While everyone else in the family was busy trying to one-up each other new cars, promotions, fake smiles, Grandma was the only one who cared whether I was happy. She'd sneak me cookies under the table during family dinners. She taught me how to play chess when I was 7, and she never once let me win just to be nice. She made me earn it, and that's why I loved her. Not because she was kind, but because she was real. Unlike the rest of them. The thing is, my family is the kind of family that takes pictures at funerals to show off their outfits. The kind that posts emotional tribute videos online with music and slow motion, and then goes to the lawyer's office the next day with calculators in hand. My uncles, aunts, even my own mother, they were all vultures circling Grandma's estate long before she passed. They used to joke about it when she wasn't around. Who do you think gets the lake house? She better not give the piano to the kid, he can't even play. I heard it all. But I never said anything. I just listened, and I waited. Because one day, during a stormy January afternoon, Grandma called me into her room and closed the door. Her hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from age. She handed me a small black notebook and said, "When the time comes, read this first." I was confused. "Why are you giving me this now?" I asked. She just smiled. "Because I know what they'll do." I didn't understand what she meant, not completely. But I kept the notebook. I locked it in my safe, and I didn't open it again until the night of her funeral. The night of her funeral was cold. Rain tapped against the windows like a warning I couldn't yet interpret. After everyone left the cemetery, after the fake tears dried and the photo ops ended, I sat alone in my apartment with the black notebook on my lap. I hadn't dared open it before. But something in me knew. Tonight was the time. Inside were exactly 5 pages. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. Neat, elegant, calm. The first line said, "They will forge the will." My stomach dropped. The second line said, "You'll need proof." The third line, "I trust you to find your own way." That was it. No map. No specific names. Just a quiet warning from the one person who truly understood the monsters we shared a last name with. And that's when I knew I needed to act fast. The next morning, I drove 3 hours to the funeral home before sunrise. I had already made arrangements with the director weeks ago, quietly, respectfully, under the guise of honoring her memory with a final message. What they didn't know was that I had custom-built a voice recorder, small enough to fit inside the embroidery of her pillow, yet sensitive enough to pick up even a whisper. I placed it beneath her head, next to the Bible she always read, and closed the casket myself. The funeral director never asked questions. I paid him in cash. 3 days later, I got the call from the lawyer's office. Reading of the will tomorrow at 11 a.m. I showed up in a black shirt and silence. My aunt wore red lipstick and fake grief. My uncle was already half drunk before we began. My mother, well, she hadn't looked me in the eye in over 6 months. I sat in the back while they all gathered around like it was Christmas morning. The lawyer, Mr. Daniels, opened a folder, adjusted his glasses, and read the document with a slow, heavy tone. "To my eldest daughter, Margaret, I leave the house on Willow Lane. To my son, Robert, I leave the vintage collection and all property in Arizona. To my granddaughter, Emily, I leave the—" My name wasn't there. Not once. No mention. No inheritance. No explanation. It was like I didn't exist. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. Because I already knew. You see, I knew my grandmother wouldn't do that. Not her. Not the woman who whispered chess strategies in my ear as a child and cried when I got into college. Something was wrong. Something was missing. And they were all smiling like they had gotten away with something. That night, while they were out celebrating their victories, I returned to the cemetery. No one saw me. I wore black gloves and a calm heart. I dug just enough to retrieve what I had hidden. Then, I listened. And what I heard changed everything. The audio started with silence. Then, the soft creak of the casket lid being lifted by someone, probably the funeral director or maybe a family member, sneaking a final glance. I heard footsteps, whispered voices. Then, a man's voice. My Uncle Robert. "It's all here," he muttered. "She didn't change anything, right?" A pause. Then my mother's voice, cold and clear. "Of course she did." She added the boy in at the last minute. "I found the newer version in her desk drawer last week. She gave him everything. There it was, confirmation, a smoking gun." But it didn't stop there. My aunt chimed in, scoffing. "There's no way she really wanted him to have the house. He's not even family. He's a loner, always was." My mother replied sharply. "It doesn't matter what she wanted. The lawyer hasn't seen the new copy. We burned it. This one is clean. It names us the way it should have been from the beginning." Another pause. Then Robert again, chuckling darkly. "She'll never know." And my mother, without missing a beat. "She's dead. It's over." Number. It wasn't. I stopped the recording and just stared at the device in my hand. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, focused, because now I had proof. I didn't need revenge, not in the way they might have expected. I needed justice. I needed this lie unraveled in front of them, publicly, with no way to run from it. The next morning, I made 3 copies of the recording. I gave one to Mr. Daniels, the lawyer. I mailed another to the local police. And the last one, well, I kept that one, just in case. When I walked back into the lawyer's office that afternoon, the atmosphere had changed. Daniels wasn't smiling anymore. He looked pale, uncomfortable. My mother and the others were already there, gathered again like hungry dogs at the dinner table. I didn't sit down. I stood by the wall, silent, as Mr. Daniels pressed a button and let the audio play aloud in full. For 12 minutes, no one spoke. No one moved. Just the sound of their own voices echoing back at them evidence they had never expected would exist. My mother's face turned to stone. Robert leaned forward like he could somehow stop the recording by staring at it. My aunt just muttered, "Oh God," under her breath. When it ended, the room stayed quiet. Mr. Daniels cleared his throat, then turned to me. "It appears there's been a fraud, a very serious one." He looked back at them. "And legal consequences are pending." That was the first time I saw fear in their eyes. Real fear. Not anger, not arrogance, just silence. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I just handed Mr. Daniels a copy of the original will, the one Grandma had mailed to me a month before she died, in a sealed envelope with her initials carved into the flap. A backup. She always thought ahead, and she trusted only me. Mr. Daniels examined the envelope carefully, his gloved fingers tracing the wax seal. "This was mailed directly to you?" he asked, though the answer was already clear. I nodded. "She sent it certified. I signed for it myself." He opened it slowly, like it was a sacred artifact. Inside was the original, handwritten will notarized, dated 2 months before her death. This version left the lake house to me, the antique jewelry, the paintings, the library, the very soul of her estate. Everything they tried to erase was right there in black ink, protected by her foresight and by my silence. Daniels read it aloud, word for word. No edits, no loopholes. When he was finished, my mother stood up. "This isn't valid," she snapped. She changed her mind later. That's why she signed the other one. But Daniels didn't even look at her. "The version you presented has no verification. No postmark, no signature match. In fact, he pulled up a digital file on his screen. Your version was typed and printed, but Evelyn James always wrote her legal documents by hand. Every single one. And this handwriting has already been confirmed. Robert cursed under his breath. My aunt whispered something I couldn't catch. And my mother? She sat down slowly, like her legs couldn't support the weight of her lies anymore. What followed was a blur of legal chaos, court filings, investigations, an official declaration of will forgery and fraud. But I stayed out of the spotlight. I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it online. I never told anyone outside that room what happened except you. Because this isn't a story about revenge. It's about trust. About how sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one carrying the loudest truth. And Grandma knew that. That's why she didn't tell me everything. She wanted me to find the truth for myself, to earn it, to grow into the person she always believed I could be. Even when the rest of the family treated me like a shadow, she gave me not just her possessions, but her legacy, her strategy, her sense of timing. Like chess, you don't need to rush to win. You just need to wait for the right moment to strike. A few weeks later, I visited her grave again. The grass had started to grow back. The flowers were fresh. I brought her favorite white lilies. I sat there for a long while, thinking about everything. The betrayal, the silence, the victory. And then I whispered, "You were right. They tried, but they failed." I smiled. Checkmate, Grandma. After everything settled, the court ruling, the asset transfers, the dust of scandal, I didn't go back to the family home. I didn't return their calls. Not out of bitterness, but because I realized something. There was nothing left there for me. The real home, the one that mattered, was the memory of my grandmother, the quiet moments we shared, the chessboard by the window, her laugh when I told a joke that wasn't funny. That was the inheritance I truly valued. The rest, the house, the money, the antiques, those were just tools. Symbols of a bigger truth. That love, real love, comes with responsibility, with courage. They thought they could erase me with ink. They thought if they wrote my name out of a document, it would undo the bond I had with her. But they never understood the most important rule in her playbook, the one she repeated to me over and over again when I was a child. The truth always wins, even if it's late to the game. And she was right. The truth came late, but it was loud. Today, the house on Willow Lane is mine. I don't throw parties. I don't flaunt it on social media. I've restored every room exactly as she had it, down to the books on the shelves and the porcelain figures in the hallway. I sit at her piano some evenings, though I never really learned to play. I'm not sure I ever will. But sometimes, I place the recorder on the lid and press play. I don't listen to the lies again. I listen to her voice. Because before I tucked that device into the coffin, I had recorded something of my own. "Hi, Grandma. It's me. Just in case they try something, I want you to know, I'll protect what matters. I'll protect what you gave me. I'll protect your name." That voice still echoes through the halls sometimes, like she never left, like the truth still lives here. I don't need their apology. I don't need their respect. What I have is worth more than all of that. I have the final move, and they will always remember how they lost. Because in the end, they didn't just underestimate me. They underestimated her.